Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second ever Keeping Karlsson Patron Mailbag Show, and the first ever Mailbag Show that Brian is unable to attend. Unfortunately, he has some family obligations, but we are very lucky to be joined by the great Peter Harling from Dobber Prospects Radio and all the other places that we mention every time we have him on the show. Thanks so much for joining us, Peter.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm happy to be here.
So I announced to the patrons that we have you coming on and we were able to take some prospect questions. And now our event has like 20 plus questions. So obviously the plan for the mailbag show every week is just to go for around 30 minutes. So I saw you start some questions. Let's not waste any time. Why don't we go through the ones that you wanted to talk about? Then afterwards, if we have time, we'll do some more. See how far we can get.
Cool.
All right. So let's start with Colin Hunt, who asks, do you see McAvoy as being worth a draft pick this year? What's his production going forward looking like? Obviously, the big news that we have to bring up is that Torrey Krug is injured. He's not going to play to start the season, at least. We don't know exactly how long he'll be out, but that's a prime opportunity. Do you expect McAvoy to be quarterbacking the top power play with Pasternak and Bergeron and Marchand?
Yes. Yep. The last time I was on your show, we spoke about McAvoy, and I spoke pretty highly of him. I think his audition in the playoffs last year with the Bruins against the Sens was more than enough to convince me that he's ready for prime time, not only to make the team, but to play in a prominent role. I wouldn't even be surprised to put him out of the Rookie of the Year conversation. So I think he's worth the draft pick this year. And I think his production going forward will be, obviously it'll get, better. But you look at a lot of the rookies that come in and they don't need as much runway to hit full speed as they used to. So I wouldn't be gun shy about drafting McAvoy and drafting him relatively early too.
Well, but you're probably talking about in a keeper league when you're saying to draft him early, or are you saying even in a 1-year league?
Even in a 1-year league, depending on how deep your league is, right? So but I think 30 points is a reasonable forecast for him. I think. So that's pretty garden variety for defensemen. But if you look at his upside and the chance that he reaches some of that upside sooner, I think 30 points is a pretty modest forecast for him. So, and he's also going to get you a whole bunch of hits and blocks too. So if you're in a multi-cat league as well, he's got a little bit extra value.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I guess we don't know. Like, it's possible, probably unlikely, but it is maybe possible that with Krug out, if McAvoy does really well, who knows? Maybe he can take that job. But you don't want to just say that. You never know. Like, most likely Krug's going to come back and take the top power play job. But you said in that episode that you came on last that you still thought that McAvoy was going to be the main guy at even strength. So it sounds kind of like a Provorov situation. Provorov had a good rookie season himself. I think just around 30 points like you're projecting for McAvoy. And yeah, with the upside. Yeah, it's going to be, I'm sure he's going to get drafted in all the cupful drafts. By the way, to the patrons listening and to yourself, who is manning a team, all 15 cupful drafts are this weekend. So that's very exciting. These are all 1-year leagues. I'll be curious actually to see how high McAvoy goes in all of these leagues. I have a feeling he's not going to go undrafted, especially with Krug out, even if people just want to take him for the time that Krug is out, and then, they could at least reassess then. So
yeah, I think another player who might benefit from the Krug injury, and I don't expect Krug to miss a lot of time, but I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, Grzelcyk or something like that. He's like Torrey Krug 2.0. He's pretty much the same player, just a little bit younger. So I think if you're looking for someone to replace Torrey Krug in the Bruins lineup, if he's not ready to go for day one, I think that would be the guy.
Yeah, so a lot to watch, because also in Boston, you've got up front, we've been seeing Anders Bjork, a guy who I didn't really know much about, playing on the top line with Marchand and Bergeron, and then we've been seeing Pasternak with Krejci on line too. So I'm not sure if there was a question here about Bjork later on, but do you have a quick take about him and if you would be drafting him in a 1-year league?
Yeah, I've been really high on him coming into this season since he turned pro last year. I think he's got potential to steal the top 6 job that Ryan Spooner wasn't able to lock down. He's been looking really good in preseason. He's showing a little bit of chemistry with his line mates. It's only preseason, and if he ended up playing in the AHL to start the season, even just like a month or two, that wouldn't be a bad thing for him personally and for his development. But hey, man, if he's ready to go, the Bruins will play him, and I think he could be ready to go. And if you're in a really deep keeper league, and especially if it's a bangers and mash, another prospect that you might want to put on your radar, your watch list, or sign him if he's a free agent is Jesse Gabriel. He's Brad Marchand 2.0. They had very similar stat lines in their last 2 years of junior. He's been making a really good impression at the Bruins camp. He's an agitating kind of player. He's a little bit bigger than Marchand. He's got great wheels, and he's got some offensive upside too. So that's a player you might want to put on your radar.
Interesting. Okay, Jesse Gabriel. I'm writing him down. I like how on Dauber's player profiles in the frozen pools, you can see the preseason line combinations. I can see Jesse Gabriel played with, what do I got here? Noel Asiari and Riley Knight. Okay, so he's not playing on a prominent line, but hey, if he can make the team, and like you're saying, obviously this is more of a long-term suggestion for
Yeah, I'm
him.
not saying he's going to be just as good as Brad Marchand in year one. I mean, Brad Marchand went from junior into the AHL, and I expect Gabriel will do that too. So this is a waiter that you're going to have to be patient on. But in 3 years from now, he could be doing what Brad Marchand was doing in the third year of his career, which wasn't bad.
Well, of course. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So by the way, you mentioned that Spooner could get bumped from the top six. Like he already was bumped from the top six like last year. He's not going to make it, but he still has been playing on that top power play. They like him there, I guess, on the point with the defensemen. So normally it's him and Krug at the point, and apparently now it's been him and McAvoy with Krug out. All right, let's go to the next question here. Let's go to Tristan's question about Jesse Puljujarvi, who has been playing with McDavid. And I think now's a good time to bring up, like, or to ask you what your thoughts are on preseason line combinations, because obviously at the start of the preseason, we were all talking about how, I think there was a news article that McDavid himself said that Ryan Strome was the guy that he thinks is going to be a big sleeper and that people should pay attention to him. And then we've been seeing Puljujarvi's been playing with him, but also Strome has been playing with him. I don't even know if it's worth asking for you to like try to predict who's going to get the majority of the playing time on that top line with Connor McDavid. But what are you thinking so far of Puljujarvi's camp? It looks like he's going to make the team.
Yeah, I mean, here's a guy who probably should have been picked third overall in his draft, right after Patrick Laine. Um, he's got tremendous upside, and on his own right, his own skill set. You take McDavid and any teammates out of the equation, he's still very fantasy relevant. He's a great player. Now, as far as line combinations go and who's going to play with McDavid, if I'm in a draft, I don't draft anybody out of Edmonton on the assumption that they're going to play with McDavid. Drafting players because they may play with a superstar is risky business, because if they don't, you have overreached on him and it's bad value. Draft them for where they are worth on their own right. And if they play with a superstar like McDavid, then that's just gravy. And there's too many players in Edmonton to worry about which one's going to play with McDavid, because I think it's going to be a rotating door throughout a lot of the season, depending on who they're playing against, who's playing hot, who's injured and whatnot. You put him on a line with Patrick Maroon and Milan Lucic, and they get hot, you leave it, and then when they get cold, then you mix it up. You try Puljujarvi, you try Kajula, you try whoever, right? So I would never draft someone on the premise that they play with a better player, and that will make the guy I'm drafting even better and better value, because that's just bad strategy.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't be reaching for someone like Puljujarvi, who even in this nice preseason he's having, his 3 points. And actually, he got all 3 points in one game against Winnipeg. And again, I even feel like dirty talking about like box scores for preseason games. I don't mean to say that this means anything, but just to say he hasn't even been getting like a lot of ice time for whatever that's worth. I don't know. I'm so excited for the season to start, Peter, so we can stop like guessing and actual talk about like how many minutes this player's been playing, who's been playing with who. I'm excited. But okay, yeah. But obviously, once you get to the end of your cupful draft, you might as well take a reach on some people. At that point, I think it's okay to take someone because you think they'll play with a good player, because these are the guys that are your first drops once the season starts. And we have our 4 ad drops per week. So why not take a shot on someone? And if it doesn't work out, you could just grab the guy who does get there or someone else. But yeah, he's looking good. We'll see. I personally wouldn't, like you say, also, like, I don't know if Puljujarvi is just going to get on that top line and stay there all season, even if he starts there. I think that's the kind of thing, like you say, that where they're going to mix people around.
Yeah, I think the question you want to ask when you're looking at drafting Puljujarvi isn't will he play with McDavid? It's will he play the whole season in the NHL? Because if the answer is no, then he's not draft worthy. But I think the answer is yes. I've been wrong before, but I think he's figured it out. I think he played in the AHL last year. He had a little bit of time in the NHL as well. He played 28 games, and I can't remember off the top of my head if he was in the lineup for the playoffs. I believe he was. But anyways, I think he's ready, and his players having good performances in preseason doesn't ensure that they're going to make the roster. But if he was kind of invisible, it would kind of ensure that he doesn't. So the fact that he's looking good in preseason doesn't guarantee he's got a spot on the Oilers, but it puts him in the conversation. I would be surprised if he didn't make it to start, and only partially surprised if he was sent down for a little bit in the AHL. If he goes on a cold streak, send him down. He's waiver exempt.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so basically your advice is don't reach for Puljujarvi in a one-year league, but maybe late if you could get him. There's potential upside, of course. Okay, let's go to this next question about defenseman. Alex Claremont asks, Claremont or Claremont? I've been in my head Claremont, but now I'm seeing it's Claremont, so it's probably that. Okay, Pulock, Theodore, or Montour? How do you compare these three guys? And then Brad asked to add Shabbat to the list. Maybe we could have a quick D talk. We already talked about McAvoy. Is McAvoy number one of all these guys? And I think for this conversation, well, I guess maybe people don't want to only talk about one-year leagues. So maybe you could talk about both. I'm thinking now, I'm like starting to focus in on the cupful draft this weekend. So I'm wondering who's worth drafting. I know McAvoy, we've already discussed, is worth drafting in a one-year league. How does he stack up now with Pulock, Theodore, Montour, and Shabbat?
Yeah, well, when you're talking about prospects like this, I think it's pretty safe to assume that anyone who's looking at players like these are probably in a keeper league, or a very deep league at least. If you're throwing Shabbat into the mix, I would put him ahead of any of these other three guys. I think Thomas Shabbat is just a beast. Injury to Karlsson is going to ensure he starts the season with the Sens and give him an extended role to start, and I think he'll be really successful at it. So I think the thing with these guys is you have to look at, they're all very similar. So who's got the better opportunity? And I think the guy that's going to get the most minutes out of the three of them would be Shea Theodore. I think he's going to be one of Vegas's top defensemen, and he'll get first unit power play time. He's their best D. Brandon Montour might be a better offensive defenseman, but I don't think he's going to get the same kind of minutes. And as far as Pulock goes, I'm having a hard time getting a read on him. I don't know what his opportunity is with the Islanders. They've got Boychuk, they've got Leddy. They're getting a little bit gray in the beard. And they've never really taken a really firm grip on the number one defenseman position, right? So I'd say there's an opportunity for him to come in and steal the job there and be the guy. I'm just not sure if he's ready for that yet. He's, what is he, 22 years old. And he's got one game under his belt from last year. He spent the entire season in the AHL. So to go from the AHL to a top pairing first unit power play guy in the NHL, that's a really big step. And, while I think he's going to play in the NHL this year, I'm not convinced that he's going to take on that kind of a role. So between the three of them, I'd probably go Theodore, Montour, and Pulock for a one-year league. And if Shabbat's in the mix, he's at the top.
Okay, interesting. But with Shabbat, I just feel like in a one-year league, once Karlsson's back, I think Theodore is the one who's going to be on the top power play or has the better chance of being on the top power play. And even someone like Montour with, the injuries on Anaheim, like Vatanen's out and Lindholm is out. So for now, at least, so it's only Fowler to compete with. So I think, yeah, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm curious to know who's been getting with. Okay, I'm going to check this out on Dabber right now for Ottawa during the preseason. Who's been getting power play time? Chris Weidman. I can only see the last game, though. I think if I'm using Frozen Fools right. And Dion Phaneuf on the power play. Has Shabbat? Yeah, I'm not seeing Shabbat getting any power play time, actually. He did get a little bit in the last game. Okay, well, who knows what it's. They're probably just trying out different things. I got to stop just thinking about this preseason stuff. Also, Pulock, I see, didn't play in the Islanders' last game. For some reason, Nick Leddy got the majority of power play time, for what it's worth. But okay, you're the expert. Let's go with it. So you said Shabbat, then Theodore, then Montour, then Pulock?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next question here. Trying to find which one. Jesse Sherman asked, so I'm reading a lot about Dylan Strome looking awful at camp. Is it time to call him a bust? What's the deal with this kid?
All right. I haven't seen a lot of Arizona Coyotes camp. But no, it's way too awful or way too soon to call him a bust. He's a really talented player. So the knock on him is his skating. He's not a dynamic skater, but he's got great hands, great vision, good size, pretty much all of the other components you're looking for. Um, just keep in mind that he's still really really young. He just aged out of junior. He's just finished his fourth year of junior hockey. This is his first year of pro eligibility. The average player takes at least or about 5 years from his draft to become an impactful player in the NHL. And so Strom's only 2 years into it. Really, this will be his third post draft year. It's the outliers that come in quicker, and so he's right on track as far as I'm concerned for where he should be in his development. He had went back for his final 2 years of junior, and he dominated. He was just a beast, and he dominated the World Juniors for Canada, and he's gonna have to make an adjustment to play at the pro level. It's a huge step to go from dominating junior to being in the pro level. And I have every confidence that he can figure it out. He'll have to compensate for his skating, but like I said, he's got the hands, he's got the vision, he's got great hockey sense. So if he can't get his feet up to speed, he'll find another way to be an impactful player in the NHL. So no, far from a bust. You just got to tap the brakes on what your expectations are for him to contribute to your fantasy roster in a timeline sense, but he'll get there.
Okay, well, that's good to know for people in deep keepers who can afford to hold on to him. Obviously, the guy in Arizona that everyone's excited about is Clayton Keller. I'm seeing that he's been playing with Stepan and Domi just where we wanted him to be. He's got, well, whatever, couple assists. I'm gonna stop bringing this up, but yeah, no shots. Does that mean something? He's not taking shots? Is Clayton Keller a shots guy, or is he more of a guy that's just gonna dish the puck to Domi and Stepan?
He's more of a playmaker for sure.
So maybe in a league like the Cupful, he might not be as valuable as people are expecting. Maybe up. I guess like when I think of a guy like that, I think of someone like Shifley, who's like amazing and could get like 80 points next year, but probably still won't be worth drafting like the first couple rounds just because he doesn't contribute in the peripherals like shots.
Maybe.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Max Domi, by the way, healthy, playing well, it looks like. I'm liking him also for a breakout. I feel like everyone's so excited about Clayton Keller. I'm really excited to see what Max Domi is going to do this year. Do you think this is his year to potentially like reach 60 points or approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even exceed it.
Hey, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm high on Arizona, man. We talked about them on the prospect podcast you had me on a while ago, and we talked a lot about the up and coming kids. But don't overlook guys that are already on the roster like OEL and Domi. They're gonna have huge seasons in Arizona. There's a lot of fantasy value there.
Yeah, well, Domi scared us when we saw that there was an injury. Everyone on our Facebook group was like, just being like, oh no, everyone was so sad about Domi being injured before it took like halfway down the thread before someone even mentioned like who's going to take a spot. But now it looks like Domi's going to be okay, maybe even start the season. I'm wondering like if he were to get injured or if he were to be out for a little bit, my guess is Alex Goligoski is the guy who would be the one you'd want in the short term for the power play guy playing with, Domi and Stepan and those guys. Okay, let's go to the next question. Ryan asks, can you guys touch on Eriksson Ek? Yeah, he's a name that every once in a while I see, but I haven't heard much buzz around him. How's he been doing in the preseason so far? How's he doing in the preseason so far? Ryan continued, I heard he's going to go to the third line. What's his value in a bangers and mash?
All right. So Joel Eriksson, he started the season last year in the NHL, if I'm remembering this correctly, and then he went to Europe, and then he came back at the end of the season. Looked really good when he came back, and he was playing with Minnesota at Traverse City, and I was having a conversation with Shane Malloy from Hockey Prospect Radio the other day, and he said there were two prospects in the tournament that he saw that he thought were NHL ready, and one of them was Joel Eriksson Ek. So if Shane says he's going to be in the NHL this year, then you can kind of count on that. I think he will top out as a third line this year in Minnesota. You got Koivu and Stahl are pretty much locks ahead of him. So his value in bangers and mash leagues is is pretty good. He's 6'2", 197, but he's not a super aggressive player, so he'll get you some face-off wins and some hits. But if you're looking for hits, draft someone else. As a third-line center, he's going to get you less of the bangers and mash stats and more of the shots and assists and goals, offensive variety stats.
Yeah, maybe if you want hits, take the guy who might line up with him, Marcus Foligno, because that's what he's known for. And I'm seeing that they ran a line of Charlie Coyle, Eriksson Ek, and Marcus Foligno at their last preseason game. So I wonder, but Marcus Foligno's a guy at one point I thought had some offensive upside. Now I guess he's 26, maybe it's gone, but definitely he could help you in hits, and we'll see what kind of ice time he could get over in Minnesota. But Eriksson Ek, yeah, it looks like I don't know. You can't have two guys on the line throwing all the hits. Someone has to actually be playing the puck, I'd imagine.
Well, if all you're doing is hitting, then you never have possession of the puck, and that's not a good thing.
All right, so I like this next question. You know, I'm a sucker for these lists. I can only do one a show for the mailbag show, but yeah, any guys we should keep an eye on for top line deployment early on. So that's by Evan Mann. So we've already talked about a couple, like Puljujärvi potentially, and I guess we talked about Anders Bjork. Is it Anders Bjork? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. On Boston, and I guess Clayton Keller. Obviously, we're spinning this towards prospects. I've got some others in mind I could bring up to you. I saw Tyson Jost on Colorado has been getting some clicks with like Rantanen and McKinnon. How do you think he's looking so far?
I haven't had a chance to see any Colorado games, but what I know about him is that I like him a lot. I own him in one of my own fantasy leagues, and I have him rostered this season. I'm counting on him to play a top 6 role. I'm counting on Colorado to finally trade Matt Duchene at some point, and that'll open up a top 6 center role for him right behind Nate McKinnon. Another player I'm really high on this season, I think has tremendous. Again, you look for players that have the opportunity to step into a top 6 role in their roster this year. So you got to have the skill and the ability, but there's got to be room for you there too, right?
Of course.
So I look at the New York Islanders and I look at their number 2 center, and Brock Nelson isn't exactly blowing up my skirt. I'm not really excited about him as a second line center. And then you look at the highlight reel of a player like Matt Barzal, and I think that's a good fit. I could totally see Matt Barzal playing on the second line center behind Tavares this season and getting some really plumb scoring minutes and some pretty decent wingers too. Maybe looks like Lee and Eberle are going to play with Tavares, so that leaves guys like Hosang, Bailey. Maybe they move Nelson to the wing. But anyways, they need some secondary scoring and some support offense on the island, and I think Matt Barzal's the guy that's going to have an opportunity to do that.
That's cool. Yeah. Hey, maybe he could wake Andrew Ladd up, make him worth looking at in fantasy. Probably not. I guess with the Islanders, you said before you wouldn't draft a guy just because of who he's going to be playing with. But I feel like anyone who's going to be drafting Eberle, and I've seen some people really excited about Eberle, and why not if he's going to be playing with Tavares? But it's like scary because last year with Andrew Ladd, everyone was drafting Andrew Ladd because they thought he'd play with Tavares. Then he went down, and then he was useless for the most part. Hopefully Eberle will stick, and I think he is drafting just because he'll play with Tavares. But I guess, yeah, there is always that risk that if he doesn't play with him, I don't know how much you can expect from him. Maybe he's better than Andrew Ladd, though.
Yeah, he's an excellent example of someone. Assume that he's not playing with John Tavares and forecast him for however many points you think he'll score playing on a line with anyone else on New York Islanders, right? So if that's 20 goals or 30 goals or 30 points, whatever the case may be, then that's where you should be slotting him on your draft. And if someone takes him 10 rounds earlier than that, then, they did you a favor.
Maybe, yeah.
Last season, everyone was really excited to draft Milan Lucic because he was going to play with Connor McDavid. He was going to score 30 goals. He was going to have 200 penalty minutes and 500 hits. And none of that even came close to fruition. He didn't play on his line after the first week of the season.
Yeah, for sure. But I think like your advice is basically saying not to draft Eberle if your advice is to consider him as he won't play with Tavares, because someone in your draft is going to expect him to get 60, 65, maybe even approaching 70 points playing with Tavares. I would definitely not expect him to get 60 points if he's not playing on line 1 and power play 1 with John Tavares. So sounds like you're saying to take a safer choice.
he scored 20 goals and 50 points last year in Edmonton, and by the end of the season, he was playing on the fourth line. And he's, in the playoffs, he was getting fourth line minutes. So, he wasn't getting a lot of plum assignments in Edmonton last year. I don't think. I didn't watch a lot of their games, but everyone was pretty cold on him in fantasy leagues, and he was pretty widely available, and people were trying to trade him. So if you put him down for another 20 goals and 50 points, that's still fantasy relevant. That's where you should draft him. And if he plays with Tavares and scores, 30 goals and 80 points, then sweet.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, 50 points, and he'll be fantasy relevant. He also takes shots. I'm just saying you're not going to get him if you're locking him in at 50 points. Someone else is going to get him for sure.
Well, they can have him then.
Yeah, take someone who is going to have good deployment and is good on his own, for sure. Yeah, Eberle's like a bit of a reach, I guess, a risk-reward pick for sure. Okay, I still had this list now of guys. Okay, so maybe I'll just go through a bunch of them. Then afterwards, you could sort of say which ones you want to chime in on of guys that potentially have good deployment. And then maybe you could throw out if you have other guys on your list. I've got here Dadonov with Barkov and Huberdeau. Looks really good. I'm just basically giving you the guys that I've heard buzz that they're going to be on a good line going to this year that are rookies. So Hischier, I saw he's going to be getting some playing time with Hall. Of course, the number one pick. I don't need to tell you guys about Hischier. Same with Gensel, Braden Point. I've heard rumors of a line of Kucherov, Stamkos, and Braden Point, so you can't get much of it. That's everyone's all excited about Radulov playing with Ben and Seguin, and I feel like Braden Point is just as good if you're playing with Kucherov and Stamkos. And then Brock Besser, who actually Alex asked in the chat room here, asked if you could sneak in a question about Besser, so maybe you could talk about how you think he's doing in his training camp. And then Verana is the last one I have on my list here as someone who might be playing with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov.
All right. Did you want to go through all those guys?
How about just the ones you want to?
I won't be able to remember them all.
Okay, here.
Really sure remember. But we talked. Someone specifically asked about Besser. So he's been lights out good in the preseason. He's got a total NHL ready shot. I think he's a lock to make the Canucks roster, and I think he's going to start on the first line. And his job's his to lose. He's got to play to keep it throughout the season, but I think it's his to lose. And so I look at what Vancouver's expectations are this year, and they're going to, obviously they're going to try and be competitive. But realistically, if you ask them without the microphones off the record, I think they just want to look at what they have in their young players. This will be a year of assessment, and if that means a lot of losses, then, well, all right, then they'll just end up with another high draft pick, and they'll be okay with that. But I really think they're going to want to give a lot of minutes and opportunity and development for their young players. And that'll benefit Besser.
So do you think Besser's going to make an impact this year? You would be drafting him in the cupful in a one-year league?
I don't know. I haven't really looked into the cupful so much yet, and how deep it is, and how many teams are in each league, and how deep each roster is. But I would be confident in him being a 20-goal player.
Okay. So yeah, I think for the cupful, if I remember last year, so it's 14 team leagues and 18-person roster, so it's about 250 players rostered overall, including goalies. I think last year, in the drafts that I could recall, I think anyone who was below a 50-point projection was generally not getting picked for forwards. Of course, defensemen are completely different. And then exceptions for guys who got a ton of shots or blocks from forward, like a guy like Boone Jenner. I don't think anyone expects him to get 50, but I'll bet you he'll get drafted in a few leagues just because of his shots and blocks.
The plus minus count?
No, just goals, assists, shots, power play points. Well, actually, special teams points and blocks.
Those are the only. I would absolutely look at Brock Besser. I mean, I think I would project him for about 20 goals, 50 points, right? So that puts him right on the cusp of being relevant. But because he's so young, I think he's got the potential for more. So, if I was trying to choose between him and,
let's say him in Verana,
like Brock Nelson.
Or Nelson.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, Brock Nelson's 25. He is what he is. We know what he's going to be. He's a 50-point player. Not much more, not much less.
I like that advice.
Take a gamble on a guy that has more upside.
Yeah, it makes sense. If it's a guy who you're expecting that's not going to be able to last on your roster, and someone who you're probably going to be cycling, because you could always get a bit of an advantage if you drop someone and get an extra game on a Sunday or whatever. So you kind of want to have that roster spot anyways. Might as well give it to someone with some upside that could potentially earn a spot on your roster. Like you're saying, Brock Nelson. There's no way he's going to be staying on anyone's roster all season long. Brock Besser, it's possible. So I mentioned some other guys here. How about if you just give me like who you would take between, let's say, Besser and Verana and Braden Point?
It would come down between Besser and Point, but probably Besser because there's less offensive options in Vancouver than there are in Tampa. Tampa's got the triplets. They got Stamkos. Point's right in there though. He's Tampa's a pretty loaded team. So if everyone's healthy in Tampa, how do you split the minutes up between all those guys on the first power play unit, right? Besser's
Yeah,
on the first power play unit in Vancouver.
yeah, it's very exciting. I'm excited about Besser too. He did well last year when he came in, even though the Canucks aren't very good. When you said, by the way, top line for him, who do you envision as on the top line? Does that still mean Sedin's nowadays, or am I living in the past?
I don't think so. I think I would go Horvat Besser and then find another option on the wing like Backlund or something like that, maybe.
Right, or maybe Erickson could get
Yeah,
a resurgence.
yeah, something like that. Anyone
Oh,
but Vanek.
right. Oh yeah, Vanek's there. Man, yeah. So one week to go, and then we'll know for sure, at least to start the year. I'll throw out
Yeah.
another three names of just guys who aren't prospects at all. In fact, the opposite for a couple of them, but they have interesting lines that potential line mates that I'm going to be watching as I head towards my drafts. So Pominville on Buffalo had been playing a bit with Eichel, so I think he's definitely worth rostering if he is there. But again, just like you said about all these other guys, I wouldn't draft him high. I wouldn't reach for him for sure because there's no guarantee he'll stay there all year. But as someone to look at for a late pick, same with Hemsky on Montreal. Apparently, he's been with Druin and Pacioretty on line one, so that's a pretty plump spot. And then this one, I'm not too confident in. But Filppula has been, like we talked about it all summer long, who's going to take Schen's spot on the Philly power play? And it looks like for now it's been Filppula. So I don't know. I probably still wouldn't draft him. I don't know why. I just have a bad taste in my mouth for Filppula. Like he's never been useful in fantasy, and except for like that first year in Detroit when he looked good. Um,
Yeah, I wouldn't touch Alashemsky with your 10-foot pole. I'm not a big fan of Phil Pula either. He's 33 years old. 12 goals last year. I wouldn't expect him to score much more than that this year, and I don't think that the Philadelphia Flyers will be looking to deploy him in an offensive role. So who is the first option?
Pominville, I mentioned.
Pominville by default.
I mean, Hemsky's the kind of guy that I'm taking with my last pick, or I'm having on my waiver wire, flagged on my watch list as add if it looks like Montreal's going to play a few games in a row and he's still on the top line. Definitely not someone I'm earmarking for a roster spot all season long. Don't get me wrong. He probably will get injured at some point, anyways.
All right, well, yeah, you can count on that. That's about the only thing you can count on him for, though.
Yeah. Yeah, the Montreal lines are looking interesting. I don't know. I feel not exactly a prospect anymore, but Galchenyuk, I still feel like we haven't gotten to see what he's capable of. And if they're putting Hemsky on the top line, they said that they're not going to put Galchenyuk as a center. It looks like maybe he's going to be stuck on a line with like Dano, like best case scenario, if he's not on line one and not a center, it's like Dano centering him and then maybe Gallagher on the right wing. I don't know. I don't really see a scenario where Galchenyuk's getting 60 points this year unless something changes.
I don't see a lot of really good fantasy options in Montreal, to be honest.
What about Druin?
Who's he going to play with?
Pacioretty and Alashemsky.
There you go.
Well, Pacioretty's good. All right. So let's see. I guess we're nearing the end. So you wanted to answer this bold prediction for the Calder Award. Who do you got right now?
Right. So I think what's going to come down to the Calder is you've got some offensive forwards, guys like Besser, guys like Keller, and
We should also mention, by the way, Schmaltz and DeBrincat. I know we got a lot of questions about that, so maybe you could just quickly knock them off. They've been apparently playing with Patrick Kane, so maybe they could be in the conversation. I don't know if Schmaltz isn't a rookie though. DeBrincat
no,
is.
none of those guys are going to win the Calder, but who knows? It's way too early to be predicting. But right now, I think the guys that you would look at to expect to be into the race would be Clayton Keller, Nico Hischier, Brock Besser, and Charlie McAvoy. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on the award goes to offensive stats, right? And defensemen, it's hard for them to keep up offensively with the forwards. And, so if one of the forwards has a tremendous season, like let's say Hischier with Zajac out, starts the season in New Jersey as the first line center, and he's scoring at, 3/4 of a point a game pace, ends up on the season with over 60 points or something like that. that would be amazing, and it would be hard for him not to win the Calder. And Charlie McAvoy would have to be something absolutely incredible to outvote him at the end of the season. However, if none of the forwards are really able to have an explosive season, and they are all around the 30-40 point range, which is good, but not amazing, and McAvoy is able to play prominent role for the Bruins, top pairing, power play, has an impact. He's by the end of the season, you're thinking to yourself, he is clearly the Bruins franchise defenseman going forward. Then he could win the Calder Trophy. So that's the way I look at the Calder race. As far as Schmaltz and DeBrincat, I'm putting DeBrincat in kind of the same light that I saw Marner last year, and I was wrong. I'll preface this by saying I was wrong. So I thought with Marner, and there's a difference. Marner was NHL or back to junior, and DeBrincat's done with junior, so he can play in the AHL. But my expectation for Marner last year was that he would start the year with the Leafs. He'd start the year playing big minutes, and as the season started to wear on and things started to tighten up, that he would, kind of find it a little bit more difficult. He would get less and less minutes per game. He'd start being healthy scratch, be in the press box. By the time the World Juniors rolled around, that they'd lend him to Canada for the World Juniors, and then he'd go back to play for London and try and win another Memorial Cup. Clearly, I was wrong. That didn't happen. He made the NHL, and he looked good doing it. So I'm thinking the similar thing for DeBrincat this year, that he might start the season with the Hawks, but as the season wears on, things get harder. Then they have the option to send him without going through waivers, to the AHL and let him keep his confidence high. And who knows, maybe he comes back at some point during the season, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he doesn't make the season at all and he just plays the entire year in the AHL, or he does what Marner did last year and he says, there's just no way you can send me down. I'm scoring too many goals for you. The kid he's got an absolute NHL ready shot. He can snipe it like nobody's business. And he's not the fleetest of foot, but like I was saying with Strome, he's got such elite hockey sense that he finds a way to be in position. He's really elusive. He carries the puck with his head up. He's really hard to hit. He's got great feet and great hands, in that he doesn't have breakaway speed, but he's got excellent balance and edges, and he's very shifty. And he's hard for a defenseman to track down. Now, he's only ever played against junior defensemen, so when he gets to the higher level, the NHL caliber defenseman might not have a problem tracking him down and eliminating him and keeping up with his hands and whatnot. So it remains to be seen, really, what he can do. I think he will very likely get an NHL look to start the season, and it'll be up to him to see how he can compete with NHL defense.
Yeah, that's fair. But obviously, it's a pretty sweet spot to start your NHL career playing with Patrick Kane. So if he could do that, that could be pretty good. We're talking about DeBrincat. We had a question here by Justin saying, I just took DeBrincat over McAvoy. Did I make a huge mistake? Sounds like you're saying maybe yes, because you're saying that McAvoy could end the year as the Calder winner and DeBrincat might get sent down. So
if it's a one-year league, I think he took the very risky, the boom or bust pick. McAvoy is going to play in the NHL this year, barring injury. That's the only thing that's going to keep him out of the NHL. So that's the safer pick, and in my opinion, the smarter pick. But I'm not saying DeBrincat won't make the NHL, and I'm not saying he won't play on a line with Patrick Kane, and I'm not saying that won't translate to 60 plus points right out of the gate. It's possible. The kid can do it. He's got the skill. I'm just not saying that's what he's going to do.
right.
No one knows, right? Some people might say he will. Some people might say he won't. They're entitled to make those predictions. I'm certainly not gonna. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, with prospects, it's hard enough to make predictions for players who have given you 5 years of NHL experience to prey upon. So it's really hard to know for prospects. By the way, this is probably a very dumb question. Is there an age limit for the Calder, or is it any rookie into the league? Can someone like Vadim Shipachyov on Vegas, could he win the Calder?
Yeah, there is an age. I don't know what it is. It's 20 something.
Shipachyov's 30.
The Sergei Makarov rule. So yeah, Shipachyov is too old for the Calder.
Right. And Dadonov might also be too old. And also, he actually played in the NHL before. So, because one of
Yeah,
them is probably going to be better than all of these prospects in a 1 year league, because we're talking top line, top power play deployment. That's pretty likely.
yeah.
Uh, okay. Well, man, so we've already gone 40 minutes. It went by just like that. It went by so quickly. There was one more that you flagged here. So maybe I'll just ask you this one. Give us your top and bottom teams ranked by prospects in their systems, regardless of their current rosters. You want to give a quick who's the best and who's the worst in terms of prospects in the NHL right now?
Yeah, sure. So that's an easy answer because a bunch of the staff writers at Dauber Prospects and I put a little project together not too long ago, the organizational prospect rankings. So we ranked every team's prospect depth. Pittsburgh finished, Los Angeles finished dead last, 31st. Pittsburgh was at 30th. And number one was Philadelphia Flyers. Arizona was 2, Toronto was 3, Winnipeg was 4. So the criteria we used to put this list together, you can find this on Dauber Prospects. You just go to the page and there's a little scroller ticker thing that goes across the top. It's linked in there. So the way we put this list together was we made it a consensus list. We looked at their top 10 prospects. We looked at any players who are 21 and under that are in the NHL and added them and gave them all a letter grade or a score. And then each writer made their own 31-1 list, and then we made a consensus ranking out of that. So that's how we came up with this list. And so we put a couple of comments in from myself or some of the other writers. There's about 2 comments per team, with a brief explanation as to why that team is where they are, what the factors were, what we thought. And we got some comments back, some negative, some good ones, and a lot of people are asking us to explain further. And it's like 31 teams. It's a long article. Couldn't go into a in-depth analysis on each team and talk about every player. It would just be too time consuming and no one would read the whole thing. But that answers the question. You can find what we think as who has the best individual or team depth for prospects in this article.
Okay, so and then the best way to get to it is just go to dauberprospects.com and then go from there.
Yep. Yeah, right on the homepage, there's a little scrolling news feed that goes across the top, and that's got a link to this, the latest prospect ramblings, the draft rankings, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Okay,
There's
and then
another article there that might be really useful for some people who are looking for draft. For the 217 draft, we do a fantasy ranking the draft. A couple, again, consensus articles with ourselves, and we get some other media and scout type folk to contribute to it as well. So if you're wondering who from the 2017 draft is the more fantasy relevant players, that's a good place to look.
yeah, basically, I mean, if you jumped to ask prospect questions to Peter when he said he was going to be on the show, hopefully you're like checking out Dauber Prospects all the time for all their articles and listening to Dauber Prospects Radio. You're getting these, probably everything you've said on your other podcast a couple of times already or written in one of these articles. And then also, and I'll also mention that you have your Patreon going and you have this draft that's this weekend, or no, it's not a draft, but it's like people have to submit their picks by, what's the deadline?
The 30th. So we wanted to you have to be a patron member to play. It's a CHL fantasy league, and you can pick any player that's in the CHL that you want. It's 12 forwards, 62 goalies. It's a very simple scoring format because no websites host CHL fantasy, so Paul and I have to kind of do it the old-fashioned way. So it's like 2 points for a goal, 1 point for an assist, 2 or 3 points for a win for goalies, and a couple extra points for shutout. It's all on our patron page. So we wanted to have everyone submit their rosters by the start of October because the CHL season started last week. So we'll be a couple weeks into it before the deadline. So October 1st, that's the way Patreon works. Every month you have a payout or whatever it is. So that's the cutoff, October 1st. So have your team in by September 30th, and you'll be in the league. It's going to be a lot of fun. You can pretty much the same rules as CHL. You can have 2 import players, 3 overage players, and you can mix and match any of the leagues. It's not a draft. You just pick your players that you want. I made my picks today, and I posted it on my Twitter feed if you want to take a look at who I picked. It's going to be a fun league.
All right. So yeah, definitely everyone should check that out. And maybe when the things are over at the end of the year, that would be such a fun podcast episode. I'm sure you'll do it for your show. But if you don't do it for your show, come on our show and talk about what was the winning team. It'll be fun to just go through the players that led to the victory. And then, like I said, it's on your Twitter, which is at P Harling. So everyone should be following him there. Thanks so much. You really saved me. It's supposed to be a show with Brian, but I think we got an awesome one here. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Alex asked in the chat room, Alex was like, just mention these people. He's at Sergachev mention. So I saw in Roto World, by the way, that Sergachev is likely going to make the team. But, it's probably the same as what you said with DeBrincat, where he could easily just get sent down to the minors at any point. So I wouldn't be reaching for him. Okay, last thing that I promise I'll let you go. Any sense of how Sergachev's doing?
Yeah, well, actually, Sergachev is not minor eligible. He's junior or NHL, and he came out and said that the CHL is not an option for him this year. So if he doesn't make Tampa Bay, I guess that means he's going over to Europe. But yeah, if he doesn't make Tampa Bay, then he's pretty much gone for the season. I expect he's going to make it, though. You look at Tampa Bay's defense after Hedman and Strawman, it thins out pretty fast. So I would be surprised if he didn't make it.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, I was just bringing up their defense, and yeah, looking at the names that they've got playing in training camp. Callan Foote, he was just drafted, wasn't he? And we talked about how he was related to Adam Foote, and then you said that you didn't think he's going to do that well.
He's back in junior. He had 6 points in 2 games.
Oh, all right. Bye, Callan Foote. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Another spot for Sergachev. All right, Peter, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all the patrons. We'll be back at you with okay, so we've got the live Cupful Tier 1 draft this Saturday. We're going to start around 12:45 p.m. I'm going to be joined by Jeff Good, and then also the people drafting, including Brian, will jump on throughout. It's going to be just a crazy, insane thing that'll probably go for like hours and hours. We'll have to take like bathroom breaks, and who knows how that'll go, but that'll be fun if you want to join us live for that. We'll release that as an insane podcast episode. And then next Thursday, we'll have our first patron cast of the year. We'll actually have 1 game's worth of content to talk about, of actual scores. And then obviously we'll just answer all your questions. We'll actually have time to really settle in and answer all the questions as opposed to these mailbags where we rush through them. So
isn't it hilarious how heading into the preseason, everyone is super excited for preseason hockey and hockey's back. And by the end of the preseason, everyone hates it.
Yeah. Well, I just hate being teased. I hate seeing Hemsky on line 1 and wondering if that means something. It's like, I just want to know. I'm really excited for this. Like just all summer, I just feel like I've been projecting and speculating for so long now. I forget what it's like to actually report on something real. So that'll be so fun.
Indeed.
It's going to happen next week. Very excited. Okay.
Roster setting, the whole 9 yards.
Woo! Oh, yeah. Choosing which goalie to play on a Thursday or a Saturday.
Oh, speaking of which, the Goalie Post, another one of Dauber's affiliate sites, has a new managing editor. So that's going to be a really updated site this year. Should be a go-to destination for starting goalies, goalie ramblings, everything goalies.
Nice. Well, it was great last year in terms of like I subscribed to the emails of just like I got an email every single time any starting goalie was announced for any team, and it seemed like as soon as I would see it on Twitter, the next like minute I would get an email for it. So they were really up to date. So that's a super handy tool. You got to, especially if you're rushing against your opponents for a free agent pickup, then you got to subscribe so you know exactly who's going to be playing when, so you could know who to jump on. Yeah, Goalie Post, and then I like the line. I actually have this thing. I should explain on Facebook how I do it. I made a Chrome shortcut where I type DLC and then the team acronym as like a custom search engine, and then I go right to the team's line combinations for their preseason line combination. So it's pretty handy. You can just tell me anything, DLC, ANA, then I got it right open right here. Ricard Raquel with Nick Ritchie and Corey Trop in the last game. There you go. So it's a lot of great tools on Dauber. You just have to know like where to find them. Yeah, I like the line combinations and goalie posts for sure.
Now everyone's rushing to draft Corey Trop.
Got to. Well, Nick Ritchie though. Nick Ritchie had a good preseason game I saw. So he's just the kind of guy who, if you're in a bangers and mash, you just want to see any hint of offensive upside. Oh wait, I thought he did.
Offensive upside. He's got good offensive upside. He's got a great shot.
Well, in that case, he definitely gives you a ton of hits. So if he could just give you even, like 40 points, he's probably rosterable in most leagues. And he's been getting a lot of power play time in the preseason for what it's worth. Yeah, definitely someone. Well, there's some injuries on Anaheim with Patrick Eves out. That's an extra top 6 spot for someone to take. And Kessler's out also. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. I saw that Getzlaf and Perry were back together. So maybe they'll start the season together. But okay, we could ramble on forever. I guess let's end the show. Thanks again, Peter. And thanks everyone. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Elon. Thanks anytime, man.
Bye.
Cheers.